Yes, Guru Maharaj. Should I start again? Yes, Guru Maharaj. विश्वम्बर वो लेने गए इलेक्ट्रोनिक मशीन Yes, how much? Bangla was kind of.
Hello.
Should I start Guru Maharaj from where the mark is here, or should I start from first chapter or introduction? Okay, mark is on first canto, chapter 4, and verse number. Okay, it has come. Melody has come, Guru Maharaj. Should I start from melody?
Yeah.
Okay. Nectar of Devotion, Chapter 1. Characteristics of Pure Devotion Service. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 29th chapter, verse 12 and 13, Srila Kapil Dev, while instructing his mother, has given the following characteristics of pure devotional service. My dear mother, those who are my pure devotees and who have no desire for material benefit or philosophical speculation have their minds so much engaged in my service that they are never interested in asking me for anything except to be engaged in that service. They do not even beg to live in my abode with me. There are 5 kinds of liberation, namely, to become one with the Lord, to live with the Supreme Lord on the same planet, to have the same features as the Lord, to enjoy the same opulences as the Lord, and to live as a companion of the Lord. A devotee, what to speak of rejecting material sense gratification, does not even want any of these 5 kinds of liberation. He is satisfied simply by discharging loving service to the Lord. That is the characteristic of pure devotion. In the above statement by Kapil Dev from Srimad Bhagavatam, the actual position of a pure devotee is described. The actual position of the pure devotee is described, and the primary characteristic of in the above statement of by Kapil Dev from Srimad Bhagavatam, the actual position of a pure devotee is described, and the primary characteristics of devotional service are also defined. Further, characteristics of devotional service are described by Srila Rupa Goswami with evidences from different scriptures. He states that there are 6 characteristics of pure devotional service, which are as follows. Number 1, pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. Number 2, pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. Number 3, pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. Number 4, pure devotional service is rarely achieved. Number 5, those in pure devotional service deride even the conception of liberation. Number 6, pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. In the above statement by Kapil Dev from Srimad Bhagavatam, the actual position of a pure devotee is described, and the primary characteristics of devotional service are also defined. Further, characteristics of devotional service are described by Srila Rupa Goswami with evidences from different scriptures. He states that there are 6 characteristics of pure devotional service, which are as follows. Number 1, pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. Number 2, pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. Number 3, pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. Number 4, pure devotional service is rarely achieved. Number 5, those in pure devotional service deride even the conception of liberation. Number 6, pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. Krishna is all attractive, but pure devotional service attracts even him. This means that pure devotional service is even transcendentally stronger than Krishna himself, because it is Krishna's internal potency. Now number 1 is explained. Relief from material distress. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that one should surrender unto him, giving up all other engagements. The Lord also gives his word that that he will protect surrendered souls from all reactions of all sinful activities. Srila Rupa Goswami says that the distresses from sinful activities are due both to the sins themselves and to the sins committed in our past lives. Generally, one commits sinful activities due to ignorance. But ignorance is no excuse for evading the reaction sinful activities. Sinful activities are of 2 kinds. Those who are mature and those who are not mature. The sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment are called mature. The many sinful activities stored within us for which we have not yet suffered are considered immature. For example, a man may have committed criminal acts but not yet been arrested for them. Now, as soon as he is detected, arrest is awaiting him. Similarly, for some of our sinful activities, we are awaiting distresses in the future, and for others which are mature, we are suffering at the present moment. In this way, there is a chain of sinful reaction and their sinful activities and their concomitant distresses, and the conditioned soul is suffering life after life due to these sins. He is suffering in the present life the results of sinful activities from his past life, and he is meanwhile creating further sufferings for his future life. Mature sinful activities are exhibited if one is suffering from some chronic disease, if one is suffering from some legal implication, if one is born in a low and degraded family, or if one is uneducated or very ugly. There are many results of past sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment, and we may be suffering in the future due to our present sinful activities. But all of these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take to Krishna consciousness. As evidence for this, Srila Rupa Goswami quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 14, verse number 19. This verse is in connection with Lord Krishna's instruction to Uddhava, where he says, "My dear Uddhava, devotional service unto me is just like a blazing fire, which can burn into ashes, unlimited fuel supplied to it." The purport is that as a blazing fire can burn any amount of fuel to ashes, so devotional service to the Lord in Krishna consciousness can burn up all the fuel of sinful activities. For example, in the Gita, Arjun thought that fighting was a sinful activity, but Krishna engaged him on the battlefield under his order. And so the fighting became devotional service. Therefore, Arjuna was not subjected to any sinful reaction. Srila Rupa Goswami quotes another verse from the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 33rd chapter, verse number 6, in which Devabhuti addresses her son Kapiladeva and says, "My dear Lord, there are 9 different kinds of devotional service, beginning from hearing and chanting. Anyone who hears about your pastimes, who chants about your glories, who offers you obeisances, who thinks of you, and in this way executes any of the 9 kinds of devotional service, even if he is born in a family of dog eaters, the lowest grade of mankind, becomes immediately qualified to perform sacrifices." As such, how is it possible that anyone actually engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness has not become purified? It is not possible. One who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service has without doubt become freed from all contaminations of material sinful activities. Devotional service, therefore, has the power to actually nullify all kinds of sinful reactions to sinful deeds. A, a devotee is nevertheless a devotee is nevertheless always alert not to commit any sinful activities. This is his specific qualification as a devotee. Thus, Srimad Bhagavatam states that by performing devotional service, a person who was born in a family of dog eaters may become eligible to take part in the performance of the ritualistic ceremonies recommended in the Vedas. It is implicit in this statement that a person born into a family of dog eaters is generally not fit for performing yajna or sacrifice. The priestly caste in charge of performing these ritualistic ceremonies recommended in the Vedas is called the Brahmana order. Unless one is a Brahmin, he cannot perform these ceremonies. A person is born in a Brahmin family or in a family of dog eaters. It means that his past lived activities were all sinful. If a person is born in a family of dog eaters, it means that his past activities were all sinful. But if even such a person takes to the path of devotional service and begins to chant the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. He is at once fit to perform the ritualistic ceremonies. This means that his sinful reactions have immediately become neutralized. It is stated in the Padma Purana that there are 4 kinds of effects due to sinful activities, which are listed as follows. Number 1, the effect which is not yet fructified. Number 2, the effect which is lying as seed. Number 3, the effect which is already mature. And number 4, the effect which is almost mature. It is also stated that all these 4 effects become immediately vanquished for those who surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, and become engaged in his devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. Those effects described as almost mature refers to the distress from which one is suffering at present, and effects lying as seed are in the core of the heart, where there is a certain stock of sinful desires which are like seeds. The Sanskrit word kutam means that they are almost ready to produce the seed or the effect of the seed. An immature effect refers to the case where the seedling has not begun. From this statement of Padma Puran, it is understood that material contamination is very subtle. Its beginning, its fruition and results, and how one suffers such results in the form of distress are part of a great chain. When one catches some disease, it is often very difficult to ascertain the cause. When one catches some disease, it is often very difficult to ascertain the cause of the disease, where it originated and how it is maturing. The suffering of a disease, however, does not appear all of a sudden. It actually takes time, and as in the medical field, for precaution's sake, the doctor injects the vaccination to prevent the growing of contamination. The practical injection to stop all the fructification of the seeds of our sinful activities is simply engagement in Krishna consciousness. In this connection, Srila Shukadeva Goswami speaks in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, verse number 17, about the story of Ajamil, who began his life as a fine and beautiful Brahman, but in his young manhood, became wholly corrupted by a prostitute. At the end of his wicked life, just by calling the name Narayana, Krishna, he was saved despite so much sin. Shukadev points out that austerity, charity, and the performance of ritualistic ceremonies for counteracting sinful activities are recommended process, but that by performing them, one cannot remove the sinful desire seed from the heart, as was the case with Ajamil in his youth. This sinful desire seed can be removed only by achieving Krishna consciousness, and this can be accomplished very easily by chanting the Mahamantra or Hare Krishna mantra as recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In other words, unless one adopts the path of devotional service, he cannot be 100% clean from all the reactions of sinful activities. Yes, Guru Maharaj? Yes. He's taking rest, Guru Maharaj. He's taking rest, Guru Maharaj. He's taking rest, Guru Maharaj.
Taking rest?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
He came out there, I wonder where I see. तो है रखा है वहाँ, उसको थोड़ी छोड़ दी, सारी दे देंगे। I continue much?
By performing Vedic ritualistic activities.
है रखा हुआ है सब।
By performing Vedic ritualistic activities, by giving money in charity, and by undergoing austerity, one can temporarily become free from the reaction of sinful activities. For example, a person suffering from venereal disease on account of excessive indulgence in sex life has to undergo some severe pain in medical treatment, and he is then cured for the time being, but because he has not been able to remove the sex desire from his heart, he must again indulge in the same thing and become victim of the same disease. So, medical treatment may give temporary relief from the distress of such venereal disease, but unless one is trained to understand that sex life is abominable, it is impossible to be saved from such repeated distress. Similarly, the ritualistic performance of charity and austerity, which Similarly, the ritualistic performances, charity and austerity, which are recommended in the Vedas, may temporarily stop one from acting in sinful ways. But as long as the heart is not clear, one will have to repeat sinful activities again and again. Another example given in Srimad Bhagavatam concerns the elephant who enters into a lake and takes a bath very seriously, cleansing his body thoroughly. Then, as soon as he comes onto the shore, he again takes some dust from the earth and throws it over his body. Similarly, a person who is not trained in Krishna consciousness cannot become completely free from the desire for sinful activities. Neither the yoga process, nor philosophical speculations, nor fruitive activities can save one from the seeds of sinful desires. Only by being engaged in devotional service can this be done. There is another evidence in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 22nd chapter, verse 39, wherein Sanat Kumar says, "My dear king, the false ego of human being is so strong that it keeps him in material existence as if tied up by a strong rope. Only the devotees can cut off the knot of this strong rope very easily by engaging themselves in Krishna consciousness. Others who are not in Krishna consciousness but are trying to become great mystics or great ritualistic performers cannot advance like the devotees. Therefore, it is the duty of everyone to engage himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness in order to be freed from the tight knot of false ego and engagement in the material activities. This tight knot of false ego is due to ignorance. As long as one is ignorant about his identity, he is sure to act wrongly and thereby become entangled in material contamination. This ignorance of factual knowledge can also be dissipated by Krishna consciousness, as is confirmed in the Pada Purana as follows. Pure devotion service in Krishna consciousness is the highest enlightenment, and when such enlightenment is there, it is just like a blazing forest fire, killing all the inauspicious snakes of desires. The example is being given in this connection that when there is a forest fire, the extensive blazing automatically kills all the snakes in the forest. There are many snakes on the ground of the forest, and when a fire takes place, it burns the dried foliage and the snakes are immediately attacked. Animals who have 4 legs can flee from the fire or can at least try to flee, but the snakes are immediately killed. Similarly, the blazing fire of Krishna consciousness is so strong that the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed. Krishna consciousness is all auspicious. Srila Rupa Goswami has given a definition of auspiciousness. He says that actual auspiciousness means welfare activities for all the people of the world. At the present moment, groups of people are engaged in welfare activities in terms of society, community, or nation. There is even an attempt in the form of the United Nations for World Health Activity. But due to the shortcomings of limited national activities, such a general mass welfare program for the whole world is not practically possible. The Krishna consciousness movement, however, is so nice that it can render the highest benefit to the entire human race. Everyone can be attracted by this movement and everyone can feel the result. Therefore, Rup Goswami and other learned scholars agree that a broad propaganda program for Krishna consciousness movement of devotional service all over the world is the highest humanitarian welfare activity. How the Krishna consciousness movement can attract the attraction of the whole world and how each and every man can feel pleasure in this Krishna consciousness is stated in the Padma Purana as follows. A person who is engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness is to be understood to be doing the best service to the whole world and to be pleasing everyone in the whole world. In addition to human society, he is pleasing even the trees and animals because they also become attracted by such a movement. A practical example of this was shown by Lord Chaitanya when he was traveling through the forests of Jharkhand in central India for spreading his Sankirtan movement. The tigers, the elephants, the deers, and all the other wild animals joined him and were participating in their own ways by dancing and chanting Hare Krishna. Furthermore, a person engaged in Krishna consciousness, acting in devotional service, can develop all good qualities that are generally found in the demigods. It is said by Shukadeva Goswami in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 18th chapter, verse number 12. My dear king, persons who have been unflinching, my dear king, persons who have unflinching faith in Krishna and are without any duplicity can develop all the good qualities of the demigods on account of a devotee's high grade of Krishna consciousness. Even the demigods like to live with him, and therefore it is to be understood that the qualities of the demigods have developed within his body. On the other hand, a person who is not in Krishna consciousness has no good qualities. He may be highly educated from the academic point of view, but in the actual field of his activities, he can be seen to be baser than the animals. Even though a person is highly educated academically, if he cannot go beyond the sphere of mental activities, then he is sure to perform only material activities and thus remain impure. There are so many persons in the modern world who have been highly educated in the materialistic universities, but it is seen that they cannot take up the movement of Krishna consciousness and develop the high qualities of the demigods. For example, a Krishna conscious boy, even if he is not very well educated by the university standard, can immediately give up all illicit sex life, gambling, meat eating, and intoxication. Whereas those who are not in Krishna consciousness, although very highly educated and often drunkards, meat eaters, sex mongers, and gamblers. These are practical proof of how a Krishna conscious person becomes highly developed in good qualities. Whereas a person who is not in Krishna consciousness cannot do so. We experience that even a young boy in Krishna consciousness is unattached to cinemas, nightclubs, naked dance shows, restaurants, liquor shops, etc. He becomes completely freed. He saves his valuable time from being extravagantly spent in the way of smoking, drinking, attending the theatre, and dancing. One who is not in Krishna consciousness, usually cannot sit silently even for half an hour. The yoga system teaches that if you become silent, you will realize that you are God. This system may be alright for the materialistic persons, but how long will they be able to keep themselves silently? Artificially, they may sit down for so-called meditation, but immediately after their yogic performance, they will engage themselves again in such activities as illicit sex life, gambling, meat eating, and many other nonsensical things. But a Krishna conscious person gradually elevates himself without endeavoring for the so called silent meditation. Simply because he is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he automatically gives up all this nonsense and develops a high character. One develops the highest one develops the highest character by becoming a pure devotee of Krishna. The conclusion is that no one can truly have any good qualities if he is lacking Krishna consciousness. Point 3 explained. Happiness and Krishna consciousness. Srila Rupa Goswami has analyzed the different sources of happiness. He has divided happiness into three categories, which are happiness derived from material enjoyment, happiness derived by identifying oneself with the Supreme Brahman, and happiness derived from Krishna consciousness. In the Tantra Shastra, Lord Shiva speaks to his wife Sati in this way. My dear wife, persons who have surrendered himself at the lotus feet of Govinda and who has thus developed pure Krishna consciousness can be very easily awarded all the perfections desired by the impersonalist. And beyond this, he can enjoy the happiness achieved by the pure devotees. Happiness derived from pure devotional service is the highest because it is eternal. The happiness derived from material perfection or understanding oneself to be Brahman is inferior because it is temporary. There is no preventing one's falling down from material happiness, and there is even every chance of falling down from the spiritual happiness derived out of identifying oneself with the impersonal Brahman. It has been stated that great Mayavadis, impersonalist sannyasis, very highly educated and almost realized souls may sometimes take to political activities or to social welfare activities. The reason
साधु से बोलूँगा आने के लिए
हाँ रखा है सब हाँ
ठीक
it has been seen that great mind It has been seen that great Mayavadis, sannyasis, very highly educated and almost realized souls may sometimes take to political activities or to social welfare activities. The reason is that they actually do not derive any ultimate transcendental happiness in the impersonal understanding and therefore must come down to the material platform to take to such mundane affairs. There are many instances, especially in India, where these Mayavadi sannyasis descend to the material platform again. But a person who is fully in Krishna consciousness will never return to any sort of material platform. However alluring and attracting they may be, he always knows that no material welfare activities can compare to the spiritual activity of Krishna consciousness. The mystic perfections achieved by actually successful yogis are 8 in number. Anima Siddhi refers to the power by which one can become so small that he can enter into a stone. Modern scientific improvements also enable us to enter into stone because they provide for excavating so many subways, penetrating the hills, etc. So Anima Siddhi, the mystic perfection of trying to enter into stone, has also been achieved by material science. Similarly, all of the yoga siddhis or perfections are material arts. For example, in one yoga siddhi, there is development of the power to become so light that one can float in the air or on water. That is also being performed by modern scientists. They are flying in the air. They are floating on the surface of water and they are traveling under the water. After comparing all these mystic yoga siddhis to materialistic perfections, we find that materialistic scientists strive for the same perfections. So, actually, there is no difference between mystic perfection and materialistic perfection. A German scholar once said that the so called yoga perfections had already been achieved by the modern scientists and has already been achieved by modern scientists, and so he was not so concerned with them. He intelligently went to India to learn how he could understand his eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord by means of Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. Of course, in the categories of mystic perfection, there are certain processes which the material scientists have not yet been able to develop. For instance, a mystic yogi can enter into the sun planet simply by using the rays of the sun. This perfection is called laghima. Similarly, a yogi can touch the moon with his finger. Though the modern astronauts go to the moon with the help of the spaceship, they undergo many difficulties, whereas a person with mystic perfection can extend his hand and touch the moon with his finger. This siddhi is called prapti or acquisition. With this prapti siddhi, not only can the perfect mystic yogi touch the moon planet, but he can extend his hand anywhere and take whatever he likes. He may be sitting thousands of miles away from a certain place, and if he likes, he can take fruit from a garden there. This is prapti siddhi. The modern scientists have manufactured nuclear weapons with which they can destroy an insignificant part of this planet. But by the yoga siddhi, known as Ishita, one can create and destroy an entire planet simply at will. Another perfection is called Vashita. And by this perfection, one can bring anything and anyone under his control. This is a kind of hypnotism which is almost irresistible. Sometimes it is found that a yogi who may have attained a little perfection in this Vashita, mystic power, comes out among the people and speaks all sorts of nonsense, controls their mind, exploits them, takes their money, and then goes away. There is another mystic perfection which is known as prakamya, magic. By this prakamya power, one can achieve anything he likes. For example, one can make water enter into his eyes and then again come out from within the eye. Simply by his will, he can perform such wonderful activities. The highest perfection of mystic power is called Kamvasaita. This is also magic. But whereas the prakamya power acts to create wonderful effects within the scope of nature, Kamavasaita permits one to contradict nature. In other words, to do impossible. Of course, one can derive great amounts of temporary happiness by achieving such yogic mystic perfections. Foolishly, people who are enamored by the glimmer of modern materialistic advancement are thinking that the Krishna consciousness movement is for less intelligent men. I am better off being busy with my material comforts, maintaining a nice apartment, family, and sex life. These people do not know that at any moment they can be kicked out of their material situation. Due to ignorance, they do not know that the real life is eternal. The temporary comforts of the body are not the goal of life, and it is due only to darkest ignorance that people become enamored of the glimmering advancement of material comforts. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has therefore said that the advancement of material knowledge renders a person more foolish because it causes one to forget his real identity by its glimmer. This is doom for him because this human form of life is meant for getting out of material contamination. By the advancement of material knowledge, people are becoming more and more entangled in material existence. They have no hope of being liberated from this catastrophe. In the Hari Bhakti Shodhodaya, it is stated that that Prahlad Maharaj, a great devotee of the Lord, prayed to Nrsimhadev as follows: My dear Lord, I repeatedly pray unto your lotus feet that I must simply be stronger in devotional service. I simply pray that my Krishna consciousness may be more strong and steady. Because happiness derived out of Krishna consciousness and devotional service is so powerful that with it one can have all the other perfections of religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and even the attainment of liberation from material existence. Actually, a pure devotee does not aspire after any of these perfections because the happiness derived from devotional service and Krishna consciousness is so transcendental and so unlimited that no other happiness can compare to it. It is said that even one drop of happiness in Krishna consciousness stands beyond comparison with an ocean of happiness derived from any other activity. Thus, any person who has developed even a little quantity of pure devotional service can very easily kick out all the other kinds of happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. There was a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya known as Kolavecha Sridhar, who was a very poor man. He was doing a small business selling cups made from the leaves of plantain trees, and his income was almost nothing. Still, he was spending 50% of his small income on the worship of Ganges, and when the other 50% and with the other 50%, he was somehow living. Lord Chaitanya once revealed himself to this confidential devotee, Kolavecha Sridhar, and offered him any opulence he liked. But Sridhar informed the Lord that he did not want any material opulence. He was quite happy in his present position and wanted only to gain unflinching faith and devotion unto the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. That is the position of the pure devotees. If they can be engaged 24 hours each day in devotional service, they do not want anything else, not even the happiness of liberation or of becoming one with Supreme. In the Narad Pancharatra, it is also said that any person who has developed even a small amount of devotion service does not care a fig for any kind of happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, or the five kinds of liberation. Any kind of happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, liberation, or sense gratification cannot even dare to enter into the heart of a pure devotee. It is stated that as the personal attendants and maid servants of a queen follow the queen with all respect and obeisances, similarly, the joys of religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation follow the devotional service of the Lord. In other words, a pure devotee does not lack any kind of happiness derived from any source. He does not want anything but service to Krishna. But even if he should have another desire, the Lord fulfills this without the devotee's asking. Number 4. The rareness of pure devotional service. In the preliminary phase of spiritual life, there are different kinds of austerities, penances, and similar processes for attaining self-realization. However, in an executor, if an executor of these processes is without any material desire, he still cannot achieve devotional service. And aspiring by oneself alone to achieve devotional service is also not very hopeful, because Krishna does not agree to award devotional service to merely anyone. Krishna can easily offer a person material happiness or even liberation, but he does not agree very easily to award a person engagement in his loving devotional service. Devotional service can in fact be attained only through the mercy of a pure devotee. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, 1951, it is said, by the mercy of the spiritual master, who is a pure devotee, and by the mercy of Krishna, one can achieve the platform of devotional service. There is no other way. The rarity of devotional service is also confirmed in the Tantra Shastra, where Lord Shiva says to Sati, "My dear Sati, if one is very fine philosopher, analyze the different processes of knowledge, he can achieve liberation from material entanglement by performance of ritualistic sacrifices recommended in the Vedas. One can be elevated to the platform of pious activities and thereby enjoy the material comforts of the life to the fullest extent. But all such endeavors can hardly offer anyone devotional service to the Lord, not even if one tries for it by such processes for many thousands of births. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also confirmed by Prahlad Maharaj that merely by personal efforts or by the instructions of higher authorities, one cannot attain to the stage of devotional service. One must become blessed by the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee, who is completely freed from contamination of material desires. In the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th chapter, verse number 18, Narada also says to Yudhishthir, "My dear king, it is Lord Krishna, known as Mukunda, who is the eternal protector of the Pandavas and the Yadus. He is also your spiritual master and instructor in every respect. He is the only worshipable God for you. He is very dear and affectionate, and He is the director of all your activities, both individual and familiar. And what's more, He sometimes carries out your order as if He were your messenger. My dear king, how very fortunate you are, because for others, all these favors given to you by the Supreme Lord would not even be dreamt of. The purport of this verse is that the Lord easily offers liberation, but He rarely agrees to offer a soul devotional service, because by devotional service, the Lord Himself becomes purchased by the devotee. The happiness of becoming one with the Supreme. Srila Rupa Goswami says that if Brahmanand, or the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, is multiplied by 1 trillion fold, it still cannot compare to the atomic fraction of the happiness derived from the ocean of devotional service. In the Hari Bhakti Shodhodaya, Prahlad Maharaj, while satisfying Lord Nrsimhadev by his prayers, says, "My dear Lord of the universe, I am feeling the transcendental pleasure in your presence and have become merged in the ocean of happiness. I now consider the happiness of Brahman to be no more than the water in the impression left by a cow's hoof in the earth, compared to the ocean of bliss." Similarly, it is confirmed in the Bhavarth Deepika Sridhar Swami's commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. My dear Lord, some of the fortunate persons who are swimming in the ocean of your nectar of devotion and who are relishing the nectar of the narration of your pastimes certainly know from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Such a transcendental devotee regards any kind of happiness other than devotional service as no better than straw in the street, attracting Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami has stated that devotional service attracts even Krishna. Krishna attracts everyone, but devotional service attracts Krishna. The symbol of devotional service is the highest degree is Radharani. Krishna is called Madan Mohan, which means he is so attractive that he can defeat the attraction of thousands of cupids. But Radharani is still more attractive, for she can even attract Krishna. Therefore, devotees call her Madana Mohana Mohini, the attractor of Cupid. To perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Radharani, and devotees in Vrindavan put themselves under the care of Radharani in order to achieve perfection in their devotional service. In other words, devotional service is not an activity of the material world. It is directly under the control of Radharani. In Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that the Mahatmas or great souls are under the protection of Devi Prakriti, the internal energy, Radharani. So, being directly under the control of internal potency of Krishna, Devotion service attracts even Krishna himself. This fact is corroborated by Krishna in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 14th chapter, verse number 20, where he says, "My dear Uddhava, you may know it from me that the attraction I feel for devotional service rendered by my devotees is not to be attained even by the performance of mystic yoga, philosophical speculation, ritualistic ceremonies, sacrifices, the study of Vedas, the practice of severe austerities, or giving of everything in charity. These are, of course, very nice activities, but they are not as attractive to me as transcendental loving service rendered by my devotees." How Krishna becomes attracted by the devotional service of his devotees is described by Narad in Srimad Bhagavatam, 27, 10th chapter, verse number 48 and 49. There, Narada addresses King Yudhishthira while the king is appreciating the glories of the character of Ram Maharaj. A devotee always appreciates the activities of other devotees. Yudhishthira Maharaj was appreciating the qualities of Prahlad, and that is one symptom of a pure devotee. A pure devotee never thinks himself. A pure devotee never thinks himself self-great. He always thinks that other devotees are greater than himself. The king was thinking, Prahlad Maharaj is actually a devotee of the Lord, while I am nothing. And while thinking this, he was addressed by Narada as follows: "My dear king, Yudhishthira, you, Pandava brother, are the only fortunate people in this world. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has appeared on this planet and is presenting himself to you as an ordinary human being. He is always with you in all circumstances. He is living with you and covering himself from the eyes of others. Others cannot understand that he is Supreme Lord, but he is still living with you as your cousin, as your friend, and even as your messenger. Therefore, you must know that nobody in this world is more fortunate than you." In Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna appeared in his universal form, Arjuna prayed, "My dear Krishna, I thought of you as my cousin brother, and so I have shown disrespect to you in so many ways, calling you Krishna or friend, but you are so great that I could not understand." So that was the position of Pandavas. Although Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the greatest among all greats, he remained with those royal brothers, being attracted by their devotion, by their friendship, and by their love. That is the proof of how great this process of devotion service is. It can attract even the Supreme Personality of Godhead. God is great, but devotion service is greater than God because it attracts him. People who are not in devotion service can never understand what great value there is in rendering service to the Lord. Chapter 1 ends here. Chapter 2. The first stages of devotion. The three categories of devotional service which Srila Rupa Goswami describes in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu are listed as devotional service in practice, devotional service in ecstasy, a devotional service in pure love of Godhead. There are many subheadings in each of these categories. Generally, it is understood that in the category of devotional service in practice, there are two different qualities. Devotional service in ecstasy has 4 qualities, and devotional service in pure love of Godhead has 6 qualities. These qualities will be explained by Srila Rupa Goswami later on. In this connection, Srila Rupa Goswami suggests that person eligible for Krishna consciousness or devotional service can be classified by his particular taste. He says that devotional service is a continual process from one's previous life. No one can take to devotional service unless he has had some previous connection with it. For example, suppose in this life I practice devotional service to some extent, even though it is not 100% perfectly performed, whatever I have done will not be lost. In my next life, from the very point where I stop in this life, I shall begin again. In this way, there is always a continuity. But even if there is no continuity, if only by chance a person takes interest in pure devotion or devotee's instruction, he can be accepted and can advance in devotional service. Anyway, for persons who have a natural taste for understanding books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is easier than for those who are simply accustomed to mental speculation and argumentative process. To support this statement, there are many authoritative assertions by the learned scholars of bygone ages. According to their general opinion, a person may become governed by certain convictions derived by his own arguments and decisions. Then another person who may be a greater logician will nullify these conclusions and establish another thesis. In this way, the path of arguments will never be safe or conclusive. Srimad Bhagavatam recommends, therefore, that one follow in the footsteps of the authorities. Here is a general description of devotional service given by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Previously, it has been stated that devotional service can be divided into three categories, namely devotional service in practice, devotional service in ecstasy, and devotional service in pure love of God. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami proposes to describe devotional service in practice. Practice means employing our senses in some particular type of work. Therefore, devotional service in practice means utilizing our different sensory organs in service to Krishna. Some of the senses are meant for acquiring knowledge, and some are meant for executing the conclusions of our thinking, feeling, and willing. So, practice means employing both the mind and the senses in practical devotional service. This practice is not for developing something artificial. For example, a child learns or practices to walk. This walking is not unnatural. The walking capacity is there originally in the child, and simply by a little practice, he walks very nicely. Similarly, devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the natural instinct of every living entity. Even uncivilized men, like the aborigines, offer their respectful obeisances to some wonderful exhibited by nature's law. And they appreciate that behind some wonderful exhibition or action, there is something supreme. So this consciousness lying dormant in those who are materially contaminated, it is found in every living entity. And when purified, this is called Krishna consciousness. There are certain prescribed methods for employing our senses and mind in such a way that a dormant consciousness for There are certain methods prescribed for employing our senses and mind in such a way that our dormant consciousness for loving Krishna will be invoked, as much as a child with a little practice can begin to walk. One who has no basic walking capacity cannot walk by practice. Similarly, Krishna consciousness cannot be aroused simply by practice. Actually, there is no such practice. When we wish to develop our innate capacity for devotional service, there are certain processes which, by our accepting and executing them, will cause that dormant capacity to be invoked. Such practices is called sadhana bhakti. Every living entity under the spell of material energy is held to be in an abnormal condition of madness. In Srimad Bhagavatam it is said, generally the conditioned soul is mad because he is always engaged in activities which are causes of bondage and suffering. Spirit soul in his original condition is joyful. Spirit soul in his original condition is joyful, blissful, eternal, and full of knowledge. Only by his implication in material activities has he become miserable, temporary, and full of ignorance. This is due to vikarma. Vikarma means actions which should not be done. Therefore, we must practice sadhana bhakti, which means to offer mangala arati, deity worship in the morning, to refrain from certain material activities, to offer obeisances to the spiritual master, and to follow many other rules and regulations, which will be discussed here one after another. These practices will help one become cured of madness. As a man's mental disease is cured by the directions of a psychiatrist, so this sadhana bhakti cures the conditioned soul of his madness under the spell of Maya, material illusion. Narad Muni mentions
भी रख सकते हैं, लेकिन दूसरा अलग अलग नाम होता है। पद्मा गोस्वामी को बहुत लिखा है, पद्मा गोस्वामी है ना। दामोदर को जाना है, दामोदर कुंड जाना है, दामोदर कुंड कोई भी निकल जाओ महाराज जैसे इस पूरे दिन की हो जाएगी, निकल
तो चरण है क्या ये?
जाएगी।
दो चरण है।
निकल गया गायत्री
हाँ।
शीट जल्दी मांग रहे हैं आवाज दे रहे
सॉरी
हैं। आवाज दे रहे हैं
बिल रखा दे कहाँ बात कर रहे हैं? मैं तो खोल के देखा कुछ बोले ना बिल रख के आया हूँ ना पास में।
अच्छा
पानी कम कर दे क्या यार ला देते मैं
ठीक तो है
ले आता
थोड़ा
अच्छी तरह यार
एडजस्ट कर दिया
सच में ले देते ले आता ये बंद कैसे होता है तो ये मतलब कैसे ऊपर या नीचे से नीचे नीचे उतर के
इसको चेंज कराना है
क्या ये ठीक नहीं है क्यों
लगा के देखो
हाँ
बंद होता है अपने
वो पहले वाला अच्छा था नहीं
हाँ
नहीं थोड़ा सा तो इसमें दर्द कर रहा है
Sam Pandey. वो बड़ा 6 बजे आ जाएगा. I know.